we kind of have this new direction that's coming out. We have a brand new CEO, and that means a lot of changes, and to me, a lot of changes for the good. This is our new CEO, Satya Nadella. Really interesting guy and has been doing incredible things already, even though he's really only been in his role for a few months. But you can definitely see a culture change, and he's gone out and he's said, the new direction for the company is we're going to make sure that we reinvent productivity and empower people to do things, do more things, and achieve more at the same time. And that's my goal. As a technical evangelist, I'm out here to make sure that you are achieving what you need to achieve with the tools that you need to achieve it with. And I'll get into a couple of things a little bit more later. One of the really cool things that he's done just in the short time he's been there is we actually had a company-wide hackathon. Now think about this, company-wide. That doesn't mean Redmond, that means the entire world. Over 100,000 people from secretaries, it didn't matter. If you worked the front desk, if you were a janitor, everyone was invited out to do something. If you didn't know how to code, not a big deal. You have other skills. And this was really inspiring for me. And one of Satya's kind of directions is we're moving in this mobile-first, cloud-first world. Everyone has a device in their pocket. All of these devices are using computing power, and it's just an incredible thing to see. So one of the big things about being in a mobile-first world is recognizing the fact that there's other devices out there. So some of the things that have happened lately, I don't know if you've seen it in the news, but we started to move some of our tooling that's out there, like Office and other portions of Office, like OneNote, over to different platforms. So Microsoft's not being this really closed system anymore. We're looking out, we're pushing out our software onto other platforms and devices. But we want to make sure that you have the ability to do this as well. So one of my greater teammates on my extended team has created this really cool thing called the web app template. And the web app template here shows you web app plus configuration equals Windows app. And that's one thing that you can do. One of the colleagues on my team has actually gone out and he's created web app plus configuration equals iOS app. I couldn't find a link for the resources right now. I think it's still waiting to go through and get pulled into the iOS ecosystem, but that will be coming out shortly. So what you can do is you can take any web application, and everyone here has created a web application, take a small little amount of JSON, and you take your existing web app, and it's now an app on a device. How many people are actually building out mobile applications today? Great. Wouldn't it be great to do that just with the website that you've already created? One of the other things my extended team's been working on is new providers for AngularJS. So there's a thing called AC/DC, little heavy metal, but what it is, it's the Angular Cloud Data Connector. And it's a little bit of Angular code that you can include into a project. It allows you to, right now, push things out to Azure mobile services, but in the future, hopefully, we'll have other providers there as well to make things a little bit easier. Talking about a cloud-first world, this is the area that I'm really passionate about. And this kind of stuff motivates me because I've worked in a variety of different things. I've worked in small to medium-sized businesses. I've worked in startups. I've worked in large enterprises that I've been deploying to distributed systems. And it's really interesting to see all of the different projects that are out there. Now, I've only deployed to a single data center with the exception of what I've done in my role at Microsoft. But it's great that we have the ability to deploy out to anywhere across the world, right? So your applications now have the ability to reach a greater amount of people with a lower amount of latency, and you have the ability to kind of go out and service an entire world at the click of a few buttons. Talking about some of the specific things in 2014, a little bit of things that we've come out with just in the start of the year. We've been supporting a lot of different new features across the platform, and these are the things that are supposed to be making your life easier and making things easy for you to deploy using the existing knowledge that you have today, like Puppet, Chef, Docker. A lot of these are open source projects, and we're actually taking them because we see that there's lots of movement and a huge community around them, and making sure that you have the ability to use them on our platform. Just a little overview of some of the open source software that's available on Azure today. Cake's not on this list because I have a separate slide for that. But basically, anything you want to run on Azure, you can. We have an agreement with Oracle if you want to do Java or if you use Oracle database. PHP, we have a great selection of CMSs, including WordPress, Joomla. And we also have an app gallery, and that's where Cake fits in. When I came out to Manchester 2 years ago, I kind of sat down with Larry and said, hey, we have this really cool feature called the app gallery, and it enables you to set up a whole series of open source projects with a couple clicks of a button. Nice wizard. And at that point in time, we didn't have app frameworks, and I was like, wouldn't it be really cool if we can enable people to take CakePHP, push 2 buttons, and have the complete framework set up with a database connection and everything. I went back, I talked to the team, and a little bit later, we had CakePHP running in Azure. The current version we support today is 2.5.1, with the beta just launching yesterday, and it being Saturday in Seattle. We're going to bring support for 3x really, really soon. We'll have a team working on that probably Monday morning to figure out how we can get it on quickly. And in the year, or just, I guess it's been just over a year, there's been over 10,000 downloads, which is pretty impressive because there's a lot of people out there building CakePHP applications, but I'm not too sure how many are actually building them on Microsoft platforms. I noticed a lot of people are running Windows. But to me, it's a very impressive number and shows the growth of what people are doing here in Cake. So talking a little bit about the platform that it runs on, it's called Microsoft Azure Websites. That's what happens when you work in it for a long time. Well, we have default support for 3 main versions. I have a feeling that we'll be retiring the 5.3 support shortly. But you could also bring your own version of PHP. So if you wanted to run 5.6, you can bring that. All you need to do is upload it and configure it. We have a great series of features on the platform, including SSL support, custom domain support. It's scalable by default and sticky sessions by default. So you don't have to worry about the load balancer moving people around to different VMs and thinking about the state on the machines. We'll bring the user back to the same server that they've done before. Continuous delivery, we have support for a lot of the major code repositories. A lot of this just runs through Git. So you can create a brand new Azure website, deploy with Git from the command line, and it's really easy to go. Talking a little bit of extending the environment. So once you get your site up and running, there's lots of different things that you might want to do with it. And one of the main scenarios I think of is the ceremony that we go through when we're releasing new software. And that to me is having a staging environment, having a QA environment, and having your production environment. And we've enabled features to do that. It's a feature called site slots. And basically what it does is you take your original website and it adds in, there we go, animations are a little bit slow. And it adds new deployment slots within that. And you have the ability to do code promotion through that. So you can see here that, I'm a developer deploying my site out to Azure, and then I can just go and swap between my production and my staging slot. And that's really cool. One of the other things you can do if you have sensitive data is use a feature called hybrid connections. So this allows you to go from the cloud. Everyone, if it was a little bit later in the afternoon, everyone would be sitting in the audience sipping at their beer right now. And basically, what this allows you to do is connect into your corporate network. So if you have sensitive data that you can't push out, we have the ability to give you a space to kind of go in and access that data from where you are. One of the other things, which is a great productivity measure, is a thing called site extensions. And I'm going to show you a site extension because I'm really actually quite proud of the work that the team's done here. And I went and, in the spirit of open source, went and contributed to the project as well. Kind of wishing I didn't. Come on. There we go. So we have this site extension called PHP Manager, and this runs in the same context of your site. So if you go in, you can actually look at all the PHP settings, and you can enable different settings by going through and turning these on or off. And what this does is it creates a .user.ini file and kind of modifies your site in place. The feature that I went and added, and this is really important for anyone you can't see anything. Hold on one second. There we go. So I really need to duplicate this. Not print. Okay. The feature that I went and added is the ability to import htaccess rules. So you can actually go here, browse for your .htaccess file, and then what that will do is import it to a web config file. So this makes it really simple if you have an existing application in Apache to just migrate things over into Windows Azure websites. Come on. There we go. Background tasks. A lot of people have operations that you need to do in the background. We have a facility for that. It's called Azure Web Jobs. These things are really interesting in terms of you can take a web job, which could be any arbitrary code. It can be PHP, it could be Node.js. It could just be a shell script that you run on a regular basis. And you have the ability to just go and connect out to additional services within Azure, obviously because it's sitting there and running. But this allows you to decouple a lot of your workflow. And I have a really simple example of this, and I'll show it off in a second. But this provides the ability to do regular cron operations like you would in your applications today. Let's see if I can actually get this done right. So here's our old portal, or actually the full-featured portal that we have running today. And to do a web job, you can, oh, come on. There we go. Really? Okay. Apparently I'm going to have to try and do this from two screens. But if you go to the web job here, basically you can run tasks continuously or by trigger. And hopefully my internet connection stays alive here. Yep. Within a few seconds here, we'll have something pull up. And what I've done is I've just created a simple script that runs continuously that says hello world. But I've done another script where I've actually hooked up another feature into it right here. So if you see, I have a trigger job right here, and I can go and run this once. And if you go off to my Twitter profile, you see that because I've run this job, it's actually sent out a tweet. And that's a bit available because of this thing called Zapier. Has anyone heard of If This and That, or Zapier itself? Which ones were Zapier? A few people? So we have integration with Zapier, so you can go out and do tasks whenever anything executes. So we have two different targets right now. One is if you were to deploy new code, so you can have the system notify you when your new code was deployed with a status update or whatnot. And then you could get it to update you again when your web job's complete. And I just lost a tab for some reason. No. Let's see if I can get to it from here. this is the brand new portal, and you can see it does the exact same thing. So, all right, I'm going to move on. Scalability. This is the big need for cloud computing. So the ability to go and scale out your application to multiple machines. And I can do this through a couple different means. The first one is manual scalability. And basically, what we do is we provide you with a slider, and you can go into the portal and kind of drag this nice little UI slider up and hit save, and it will go out and scale your application off to many machines. Now, there's a few considerations that you need to think of when scaling your application. We're only going to go and scale the web tier for you because that's really what you're looking at here. It's like any other application. You have to think of all the different considerations like scaling your databases, scaling your caching tier, but this provides a great way to go out and scale across multiple machines. We also have the ability to auto-scale. So you can set some metrics. It could either be a CPU meter or target memory, and once it hits the threshold, it'll start scaling out in machines. You can scale it to a lot of machines if you really want to. Or when the traffic starts to die down, it will just pull back to the minimum number of machines that you want to deploy your code out to. Now, scalability goes beyond just hosting multiple instances of your application. It can also go worldwide. And the one thing that we have for this is Traffic Manager, which allows you to deploy your application out into many different regions. Those regions can scale independently, but the Traffic Manager will sit there and do DNS resolution for you. So based on performance, if someone's sitting in, say here in Madrid, and you have 3 different deployments, one in the US, one in Europe, and one in Asia, it's going to do the ping times out to those different data centers and route the user from here, most likely to one of our Northern Europe data centers. So this allows you to take those applications and get them as close as possible to your customers so they don't have to worry about latency going across major bodies of water. To work with additional features of Azure, you can download the SDK, and this still needs some branding updates, but the SDK is installable with Composer. So you can just go out, require Microsoft/Windows Azure, pull it in with Composer, and away you go. And this enables you to access a number of different features. We just brought a Redis cache service online not too long ago, because we saw that Redis is one of those things that everyone was going and deploying to. So we wanted to make sure that we provided the toolings that people were looking for. But we also have blob storage and table storage, which is one of the offerings from when we first launched the platform about 5 years ago. And you also have the ability to connect to our HD Insight service. And I noticed there's a couple people here that were using Hadoop. HD Insight is our Hadoop as a service. So if you wanted to play around with Hadoop and didn't want to go through actually having to set it up, because it is fairly complex, you can just quickly spin up a service, do your MapReduce jobs, and spin it back down again. We have the ability to do messaging on the platform with the service bus, and you can do either a queue or topics. And then we also have, for mobile applications, notification hubs, which enables people to send one type of notification to multiple different platforms. So iOS, Android, Windows Phone, Windows itself, and Kindle support has just been brought online not too long ago as well. But we also give you much, much more. So we have CDN, we have Azure Active Directory, which is a directory for managing users. Media services, is anyone building out media applications? No? One over here. So this allows you to go and encode video for multiple devices as well, which is pretty interesting. How many people are building applications API first with a really smart client side? So you're pulling all your stuff from, not as many as I would have expected. So API management is this service that we have, and basically it becomes a proxy, and it gives you the ability to put your APIs behind this proxy, which enables you to go and version your APIs a lot easier. It also provides a documentation layer for your APIs, so when you go and set it up, it will consume, well, we have support coming for Swagger, but it will also consume any other kind of, well, I don't want to say WSDL because that's really old, but you could do that. And it will go through and find all your API endpoints and provide a great documentation layer for people that may be consuming your API. So if you think of a service like Twitter, they could leverage this to have developers like you go out and read in all these different values. One of the new services we have, I don't have listed here, it's a really interesting one, is Azure Machine Learning. So we've actually brought a pretty decent offering for doing machine learning onto Azure. So we have R up and running, and you can go do predictive analysis on flat files to figure out, what is your traffic doing as it's going through your site. So that gives me about 8 minutes left, and I'm hoping that you do have some questions. What I'm going to be doing is anyone that wants to afterwards can come up to me and grab an Azure Pass. And the first person to come up and show an application that they've built on Azure, I'm going to give away this PHP Architect elephant. And then for any additional people, I actually have a list of, or I have about 10 of these, of the API management posters if you're interested in any of these. But I'd really encourage you to at least try out the platform, figure out how it can work for you, and really try and get that productivity out of the platform in terms of finding how easy it could be, extending the applications that you have today, and just kind of learning something new, because that's what we're all here to do anyways, is learn. So thank you very much, and hopefully we have some questions. Yes?
I was just wondering if you guys play Titanfall or test your servers.
I haven't played it yet, but yes, there's been many of people that have played Titanfall. Sorry?
Azure, they host all their multiplayer stuff on the Azure platform.
Yeah. So what they're doing is they're actually using one virtual machine per session. So they actually spin up, every time there's a new game session, they spin up an Azure virtual machine to manage the state of that game. So it's pretty impressive. They actually use quite a large number of cores, yeah, as you can imagine. Any other questions? Yep.
Is the media rendering done on the fly, or is it done in front and is it cached? Now when you're uploading a new media file, or is it when someone requests it in a certain form?
Yeah, so you can do both. So you can actually go out and upload new media files directly through the portal, or have them uploaded to a storage account. And then what you do is you kick off jobs that will go and encode them. Recently, we just brought out the ability to do live streaming. So you can actually go and stream those applications, or stream those encoded videos directly through the platform. Once they're rendered, though, it does take advantage of the Azure CDN, so it puts it out to blob storage, and then you can leverage CDN to push it out to all the different regions across the world. Yeah. Cool thing about the media services is it was actually used by the Olympics during the last Olympics to go and do some of the stuff there. Yeah. Sorry?
That was 3 years ago.
That was what?
2 years ago, at least.
2 years ago.
That's a long time,
The Sochi Olympics?
Ah, the Sochi one. I
Yeah.
thought about the one in London.
No. No. Sochi. Any other questions? Yeah.
Got a question of IRC. In Azure, is it possible to create an application and then provision it to another account? Say, for instance, I create a CakePHP blog and I want to give a copy to another user on Azure.
So, just to try and repeat the question, If I create a CakePHP, you said blog? How do you give access to another user on Azure? What do you mean? Can you ask what they mean by access? Yeah.
Like an instance,
Yep.
you want to share that instance with all the configuration and the app is installed there to another account. For example, I have a client, I'm a developer and I have a client I want to transfer or share that configuration and account with someone else.
Okay. There's a couple different ways you could do it. One, every subscription has the ability to have co-administrators. So you can actually, if you have a client, they could have their own Azure subscription, and you can add in a number of email addresses that would be co-administrators. So everyone would be able to access all the resources within that account. If you didn't want everyone to have access within the account, there's a backup service. I'm going to have to try and do this from here. Backup. I'll just open a new tab. So in Azure Websites, there's a backup service, and what you can do is it will take a full backup of all of the files within your website, as well as a full configuration of the site itself. So if I go into and I can't even see this. Can anyone help me out with PHP info? There it is. So if you go into backups here, you have to scale it out to standard. And I have a blog post where I just go and scale it out temporarily just to do the backup. So we could do that. So we just jump in the scale tab, spin it up to standard for a brief moment. It's going to tell us that it's going to charge us and move multiple sites over to standard for the time being. So if I go in here, I can just select a storage account. I could set up a recurring schedule, and if I had a database connected to my site, I could opt that database in to be backed up as well. But if I go in here, I can actually say backup now. And what this does is it takes that full directory structure, so log files, application code, the repositories that have been deployed out there, as well as a manifest file of all of the settings from within this configuration page. So the different versions of runtimes that you have going, anything that has been enabled, like the ability to do WebSockets, database connections, strings, custom domains, all that kind of stuff, or any kind of configuration settings that are available within here as well, will all get backed up, and you can share those files over. And then they can go in, create their own site, and do a restore from those files that you give them. Any other questions? Hopefully that answered it. Pretty good. No? All right. So I have one last thing. We do have a conference coming up called Azure Conf. This was just announced later on yesterday. I got the email in. And Azure Conf is a completely community-driven event. So there's a whole series of people across the world called MVPs. So they're Microsoft valued professionals. I was an MVP for 2 years before I joined the company. And basically it's people that have gone out and shown their expertise and done talks similar to the one that I've done all across the world to tell people about what's gone on. And we invite them to Redmond to go and put on this conference. So they've submitted talks and all this. So it's a full day live streaming conference. 50% of the tracks will be live streamed. Another 50% will be recorded and streamed alongside the other ones. So there's tons of options. But I encourage you to go to azureconf.net and sign up if you're interested in learning a little bit more. A lot of it, you'll find mostly people will be talking about a lot of .NET stuff, but that's because I'm looking for champions of the PHP or open source space that are interested in becoming an MVP as well, so we can get some more open source content throughout these events as well. So thank you very much for all your time today. Come find me to get a pass for Azure, and hopefully we can work together towards deploying something to get the covenant PHP architect elephant. Thanks so much.